bill when it was passed over to them. And on the concept of youth, they say it is a founding principle of our country that children should not be punished for the mistakes of their parents. It's time to provide an opportunity for both legal residence and citizenship for children who, through no fault of their own, and who meet certain eligibility standards, and who attain a college degree or attend the military. So just that nuance of difference, it may mean that the DREAM Act will only be available for those who can enroll, attend, and complete a college degree, or who have somehow managed to get into the military. It's very difficult to do, as I said. So what does that mean for this audience? It might mean that the new Turkish-American Bar Association may want to create a scholarship for a Turkish undocumented student and help them complete the reality of their college education. Because although many states will allow undocumented children to attend college at the same cost as an in-state resident, not all the states do that. If you're interested in those questions of how do I find out about which states offer undocumented children access to in-state tuition, at the University of Houston they maintain a website where they keep up with all of the changes in the law. But here in New York City, I can tell you that in the CUNY system and the SUNY system, undocumented children who can otherwise show their residence in the state of New York may attend college if they're admitted as an in-state person. Still, in-state tuition is not cheap. How are you going to finance that education? Another thing charitable foundations, businesses, bar associations could do would be offer very low-cost loans or interest-free loans to those who want to achieve education. Making immigration law promise a reality, even under the DREAM Act, seems like it's going to be difficult. I talked a little about sex and family. What else is in this law about money? Benson, you mentioned money. Let's talk about money. I got to wake you up again. Does $1 trillion wake you up? Some people estimate that if we will take a path to bringing the 11 to 12 million undocumented into our regularized system of having some kind of documents so they can contribute to our Social Security system, pay federal tax difficulty, contribute to state tax, be secure enough to make investment, stop sending the majority of their income as remittances abroad with the thought that they're going to have to leave someday, so they need to only build a savings account in a foreign country. It's more than $1 trillion it's estimated in the first year. One Stanford economist said that he would predict a 3% increase in the gross national product in 1 year if we would adopt immigration reform. So if you're a Republican, economic growth, sustainability, investment, you would think you're pro-immigration. And so the Republican Party was and traditionally stood actually against the Democrats for immigration reform. The Republicans usually have been the ones who have argued for more visa categories, for a path to legalization, for an agricultural workers bill. That was until 1994 when they created something called the Pact with America or the Contract with America. Newt Gingrich came into office, certain other people that we now know have been leaders in the Republican Party the last 20, 30 years. They began to change the rhetoric, and I'm going to tell you what I think did it. We ended the Cold War with Russia. We had no evil bear of the Soviet Union to demonize. The Republican Party's traditional politics had been the hawks against communism. They needed an other to project the vision of America. Can I prove this? No, but I think if you'll pause and think about it for a minute, until really before 1994, it was not constantly on Fox News and other news, CNN included, even the New York Times, to talk about illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants. They make you feel like you're being invaded all the time. Also, this is the longest period in American history that we have gone without some path of regularization or legalization. I have to admit, I do not know Turkish law. I know that you are a receiving country of many immigrants, people passing through the Turkish borders, some trying to get to Europe, some just seeking safety in Turkey. To those of you who are Turkish citizens, I thank you for the more than 1 million Syrian refugees that you are housing and feeding and sheltering. And the EU and the United States owe you owe the Turkish people and its government tremendous gratitude. Turkey also is a sending country to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, to Asia, and often to Europe. And you know the bitterness that comes from being second-class people, let alone ever having a path to citizenship. You know the fractured families. I'm so sorry I missed the family law panel this morning. I really would love to hear it. When immigration laws are tight, 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 and you have to fit into the narrow category, it divides families. Governments do this often intentionally to avoid assimilation, to avoid resettlement. They want you to be a worker. As a famous economist and law professor once wrote, we asked for workers, and people came. So Germany took them years and years, and perhaps they still haven't fully learned the lesson, that it is better to have people have the freedom to be self-actualizing, to come and be a worker, but to be able to be on a path to life in that country, to have your children grow up free with full rights and equality with other children born in that nation, to be able to bring and reunify with your relatives, should that be your choice. Guest workers is a complicated issue. Personally, if you ask me my own solution, I'd rather have a guest worker bill than have people die in our deserts. People pay, if you're coming from China, $35,000 to $70,000 to be smuggled into the United States. You become an indentured servant to the people that lent you the money. The smugglers usually get paid first, but your parents or your family or you yourself sign a promissory note to the snakeheads or to the mafia. It's true from Europe too, true from other parts of the world. The going rate from Mexico used to be about $1,200 to $2,000. It's now rising. I interview children every month from Central America. Some of them tell me their families have paid $50,000 in the hope that they'll be brought across the border. So much better for that money to go into education, that money to go into housing, that money to go into the family's development. So why not have better guest worker programs? In the 944-page bill, there's something called the W visa. W for worker. Easy to remember, right? It just happens to be the visas in the statutory scheme. This would be a very generous guest worker program. It would have some protections for the workers, particularly helping them prevent unscrupulous labor contractors. It's a little paternalistic. It has provisions such as a percentage of the payment that the employer is paying the workers go into a government bank account. It's not a permanent resident visa, but it can be renewed easily, and it's more flexible for business because it doesn't require as much testing of the U.S. labor market. It's just an acceptance that we live in a country of 350 million people, 150 million jobs at any one time, 7% or more of those jobs constantly in flux because it's itinerant labor like agriculture, ski resorts. The manufacturing industry is high and low peaks, so you don't always have everyone in a 9-to-5 job that they stay in for 30 years. There's labor movement. Let a W visa come. Nothing in the Republican system mentions a W visa. Instead, in the principles that they've articulated, they're talking about biometric visas. Some of you know if you're a foreign national and you travel the country now, your fingerprints are taken. Your passport has biometric information in it. I personally think this is fine. We want to do biometrics. We're already pretty much doing it. We don't have an exit visa system. We don't track you as you go out. So they've said they've called for that for the last 17 years. I think we need to buy stock in the companies that are going to get this contract. There are 93 million non-immigrant entries to the United States each year. So if we're going to take the biometrics on every single entry and exit, somebody's going to make some money. Let's figure out who that company is and invest. Maybe that's a good idea. They also talk about employment verification and workplace enforcement. Jeff Pitts is really, to me, one of the national experts in this area. If you're representing a company that's being audited or wants to protect themselves from a potential audit, I don't know anyone, really, honestly, and I know you're my moderator here, and he used to be my student, but I've heard him speak on this topic. I've seen his written materials. His life experience, his experience with major U.S. corporations, really no one knows more. The Congress wants it to be an electronic system. Okay, fine, we use electronic systems to go to Target and buy Christmas gifts. Oh, wait. There was a few problems with that, weren't they? Our credit cards were hacked. But maybe we can use an electronic verification system as long as they really think about it carefully and properly. To Turkish people, this may sound ridiculous, but in the United States, it's estimated that only 14% of our population owns passports. We don't go anywhere. We're very parochial. More about reform, and then I'm going to stop. The other principle that the Senate bill contains within it that I think you've probably heard a lot about. There's a lot about business immigration in the Senate bill. I mean, there's beautiful things in the Senate bill. Please, it should become law. For example, you have a PhD from anywhere in the world, you can immigrate. Gee, I'm going to open a university in Turkey and offer PhD degrees. Well, I think what will happen is that the Immigration Service will quickly write regulations that say you have to be in an accredited university, it has to be a bona fide PhD degree, but great, the best and the brightest of the world, they'll be able to come. They won't necessarily have a job when they get here. Ask all the PhDs here who are underemployed, but they'll be able to immigrate. But the provision you may have heard about is this 13-year path to citizenship. Now, using that phrase citizenship, they don't want to use the words amnesty or legalization. It's called RPI, Registered Provisional Immigrant. It requires those people living in the shadows to come forth without any guarantee of secrecy or confidentiality, to pay their back taxes for their entire residence in the United States, to prove that they have good moral character, that they have no serious criminal convictions, to meet their Social Security self-employment tax obligations. That's a lot of money if you've been working and living in the United States. And then you'll be given a work ID and a permit that says you will not be deported. But you'll not be a green card holder, and travel may be difficult. They haven't guaranteed there'll be a right of international travel. We don't know yet. And even more importantly, none of the people who apply for that RPI status, once they're in that stream, they can't get off of it. It's like an escalator, and once you're on it, you see the stairs are moving faster, you want to leap over, you won't be allowed to. So if your parent becomes a U.S. citizen, or your child becomes a U.S. citizen, or you marry a U.S. citizen and you want to get off the escalator and immigrate through the regular channels, no, you're going to be punished. You're going to be on the slow, deliberate escalator called RPI. And the Republicans have said they will agree to the RPI, but not to citizenship. So for the first time in American law, other than our racist past, where you had to be white to be a citizen, that was true until 1943. Blacks were added after the 14th Amendment. But if you were Asian, and that included, by the way, some Turks, Armenians, and people from India, they were considered not to be white. They couldn't become citizens. So, but really, since that ugly racist past, everyone who has come here, who is not dedicated to communism or committed an act of sabotage against the United States, one day could go from permanent resident to citizen. That is the nature of e pluribus unum. We are one people. We are a democracy. The Republicans are saying they'll approve a legalization but not citizenship. Ask yourself why. Only citizens vote. And it's 8 out of 10 new immigrants, sometimes 9 out of 10, choose the Democratic Party. I say let them have a path to citizenship, but win their hearts and minds. Most immigrants are more entrepreneurial, more scrappy, more hardworking than the rest of us. Which party are they really likely to join if there was something that had something to offer there? So come on, Republican Party, don't turn us into a state that precludes people from participating fully in our democracy. So I think I did it. I talked about sex, I talked about money, and then I added liberty and freedom. Thank you for letting me speak to you.
We have a couple of minutes if anybody has a question. Are there any questions for Professor Benson? Please.
You mentioned very appropriately the security risks in the VPN system,
Yep.
target, things like that. I'm a dual citizen, and I live in this kind of terror of leaking my Social Security information in the United States. But I'm assured that there's no problem with my NFUS or my Turkish information in Turkey. Why is it secure in Turkey and it's not secure in the United States? What is Turkey
I think what the United States is doing wrong for national security, leaking our personal information, is that the National Security Administration is one of the best funded, largest government agencies that none of us really know much about. And Congress doesn't sufficiently oversee them because the American people are people that have never been attacked. Wars that came on our shores came because we created them, really. The wars with the Native Americans, the wars with Mexico, the war with England. They did manage to reach Baltimore and D.C. But after 9/11, the rhetoric of security and the fact that the attackers on 9/11 all entered the United States with visas, in status, with proper documentation, made it a buzzword. And let's be also honest, we don't have the Cold War anymore. So what is the industry that was in the defense industry going to do? Well, let's see, we have a war with Afghanistan and Iraq, but the biggest money in D.C. goes to private companies for security. Oh, I'm a liberal. Did I tell you that? But I agree with you. You know, it's a problem and we have to be concerned about it.
Let me go to the gentleman right here if I can, Sybil, just real quick.
Sure.
Please. Please.
Thank you very much. First, what I'd like to do, I am Justice Counselor in Permanent Mission of Turkey to the United Nations. My name is Kutlay. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you for organizing such a beautiful event today, because it is very instrumental in strengthening our relationship and building up new partnership between legal practitioners. So what I'd like to do is just to make a few remarks on the Professor Benson's speech here, because, you know, as she said right here, the practice within the context of immigration law may pose several challenges to the housing and the education, and they represent one of the basic civil rights and civil liberties. So what is necessary follows is that the practices of immigration law may have a creating impact on the practice of the implementation of human rights law as well. So what we need to do is just to try to take new initiatives by reforming, amending, and where appropriate, drafting new law and new legislation and new practices for solving this issue together, because it touches on whatever it say. I mean, whatever it is, it touches on human rights law. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank you very much.
comments.
I want to say that one day, I'm hoping this spring, my city bar committee wants to plan a free continuing legal education program for all the consuls living in the U.S. to give you a basic 101 course on our immigration laws, so you'll be able to answer questions of your citizens who come to you with questions or concerns. And we're working on that because we feel like the consuls deserve an education on U.S. law, and frankly, they deserve it from people who know the law well, instead of just our government handing them a pamphlet.
One more question.
All right, Mike. Thank you, Professor Benson. Thank you for being with us today. Turkey is one of the few countries after the Asian nations that they send the significant number of students into the United States. And even though our trade relationships with the U.S. is not in great condition, educational relationship is at rise. And even for today, for the pre-law session, when we announced the program, we were amazed to receive too many number of students applied, to join us. And I know there are some countries, even some little countries, big and little, have signed some special visa agreements with the U.S. to qualify them for a special visa status, which would give us a flexibility besides H-1B to bring our workers here, but mostly to have our students to be able to work for, U.S. employers in the U.S. And those countries, I would say Singapore, Australia, but like you could not guess which country will sign what kind of agreement and the negotiations at the state level. Do you think as Turkish-American legal professionals we could focus on a little bit after, you know, we get together to bargain for such an agreement?
I think that's a fantastic approach, Sybil, and she does know U.S. immigration law extremely well. She's right. I'm always surprised there's not more multilateral or bilateral negotiation of special deals between countries. Australia was rewarded with the E3 visa because they were the only country really that joined us initially in the coalition against Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So they were basically won that as a quid pro quo. And Singapore, it's remarkable to me that they've been able to get some of the provisions that they've gotten, but many of them think it might be because of the financial services that are structured there. But rather than say that, maybe I can just say that in the new bill, we should maybe join in activism to get the bill passed. And you did ask me to touch on that. Each of you can, whether you're living abroad or you're in the United States, contact members of Congress. I would say particularly the House of Representatives, those who are on the Immigration Subcommittee, and explain in 2 or 3 paragraphs what immigration reform would mean for your clients, for your business clients, for the individuals that you know. Happy to say, in the new law, there is a provision that if you graduate from an American university, you will be eligible through a point system to get a permanent resident status. So you won't have to do the labor market testing. Also, they remove, this is the most remarkable, they remove the requirement for foreign student visas of proving that you'll go back home. Right now, if you apply for a student visa, children and young people all over the world are told, we won't give you this visa because you have to show you'll depart the United States when you finish your education. The new bill makes students not need to prove temporary intent. So that means many, many more young people from poor families or families who really, there maybe the intent is you are eventually going to immigrate to the United States, will be able to secure a student visa in the first place.
And when we discussed before the program, you had mentioned to me that if it is not the comprehensive bill that will pass, if you could tell us a little bit what would be the most likely to pass?
Right now, I think what's most likely to pass is that the Republicans are going to get an agricultural worker bill because most of the big agribusiness states are Republican-held states. So that's Idaho and Utah and parts of California and Arizona, the Midwest. There will be a relaxation of visas so that agricultural workers can enter. There will probably be a DREAM Act. It'll probably be limited for people who enter the country before the age of 16. It might have a cutoff of 30. Some people are asking it to be up to 40, and you'll have to complete either military or college education. And then I think the high-tech industry and the science industries are going to get some accommodations for what we call STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics majors. So what we'll have to do is, if the House passes any kind of bill at all, then what happens is the 2 branches of government go into conference committee, and the real deal will be made when they bring together. Sometimes you get a little tiny, see how less water there is? This is what the House is going to give us. And then imagine this is completely full, and the Senate has this. And they go into conference, and it doesn't come out like this. It often comes out more like this. The political face of the Congress people are saved by passing their very narrow bill, but the horse trading is done, the promises are made in secret, come out with a conference committee bill, and then if the votes can be lined up and we pass, then we'll have a pretty robust bill. And the reason I think that may happen is the National Republican Committee commissioned a study, and you can read this on their website. It said that if they do not embrace immigration, they will never win another national election. They'll win their House of Representative elections in districts that don't have much of an immigrant population, but they will never win another national election because of the coalitions of electoral college votes. So thank you. I just have one more pitch if I could, really quick. I'm sorry to eat into your time. I do run this project here called the Safe Passage Project. If you're a lawyer in New York or a student in New York, there's an event coming up that maybe you would like to attend. The night before what we call Valentine's Day, right, February 14th, make your heart warm. Come spend it with me. February 13th in our auditorium, we have room for 250 people, even more if people want to come. We have the New York and the New Jersey Asylum Office supervisors coming to speak. This is very rare, Consul Officer may know, to hear the actual people who make the decisions on the cases speak to us about children's asylum applications. Many of you may know displaced people in Turkey who maybe they would like to seek asylum in the United States. You could learn more about our standards. What we're really talking about is children who've already managed to get here or are apprehended on our borders. This year, 60,000 children are estimated that will be arrested. Those are the ones who were arrested at our borders. Last year, 25,000. The year before that, 13,000. These are children traveling without a parent. We put children in detention in this country. In Westchester County, there are 350 children today in a juvenile detention center because their parents tried to get them here and the government doesn't know what to do with them, but they detain them. We detain the children who are seeking refuge. Won't you please come to this training, February 13th, 6:30, 9 o'clock. And what I'll do after I leave here is, we'll have an email list for everyone, right? We'll send you a link for the registration. It's free if you agree to become a volunteer pro bono lawyer. Otherwise, it's $150. It'll be a fabulous evening. If you liked me at all, come. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Benson. So now we're going to move from something that, we just spoke about something that's very American-centric, our immigration system here and the complexities of that. And now we're going to move to something that's really more global. Ahmet Tunç Demirtaş is going to speak, on immigrants' rights on the Social Security from really a global perspective. So, Ahmet currently serves as the expert of services for the workers abroad with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in Ankara, Turkey. He's previously served as the acting labor attaché for the permanent representation of Turkey with the European Union in Brussels, and he served as a project consultant for the World Bank. He's prepared country reports for international labor organizations and the Council of Europe, and he served as a member of the Turkish delegation in a number of international labor conferences. Ahmet received his bachelor's degree in political science and public administration from Bilkent University and his master's degree in philosophy from Ankara University, and he's currently a PhD candidate in the Institute of Social Sciences in Ankara. So Ahmet, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will try to be as brief as possible in my presentation. First, I'll give a brief account of the international transfer of social security benefits, which is an important issue, taking into account the fact that there's been a great increase in recent decades in the mobility of labor force over all the world. Since social security is coded as one of the fundamental human rights, protection of social security rights in the process of labor migration is also an important issue for both the governments and also the workers themselves. Although this issue is a quite broad one with various technical aspects, I'll try to be as brief as possible to give a general picture of the subject. So to start with a conceptual background, we see that the first modern social security system, as we define it today, was seen in Europe when Bismarck established a basic social security system for workers in Germany in 1880. Historically, the social security system was reserved for the members of the welfare community and was strictly defined with reference to nationality, citizenship, and residence. This was mainly due to the intrinsic character of the nation state. As we come to a modern situation where immigrant workers reach beyond their national borders for earning income for themselves and their families, we see that the definition of social security was updated so as to include a mix of immigration rules and benefit entitlement conditions to control access to benefits. In this context, the first attempts to guarantee the social security rights of immigrant workers was in 1904, when France and Italy signed the first treaty on international transfer of social security rights. So this treaty basically provided guarantee for only work accidents within the context of equal treatment, which we will see in the coming slides. Here we have a number of ILO, International Labour Organization conventions that regulate the issue, and the most up-to-date and the most comprehensive one is the one in 1962, the Equality of Treatment Convention. This is particularly to be emphasized because it serves as a framework convention that protects the rights of immigrant workers overall works and transfer of their social security benefits. And then we have the European Code of Social Security. I'll just skip these, and we have the most important of the legal instruments that guarantee the transfer of rights are the bilateral agreements, bilateral social security agreements, and we see an expansion of the number of social security agreements, bilateral agreements after World War II, due to the increase in the immigration and particularly the large-scale intra-European labor immigration between 50s and 70s. And of course, the European Union has a very distinct structure here, since there is an ever-increasing labor force mobility within the EU, and this made the EU bodies to adopt various regulations and directives for creating a legal basis for the coordination of social security of the countries. Here we can see three main instruments, and since 50s. Now we have the latest one, the 883/2004 regulation, which regulates the coordination of social security systems among the members of the EU. Here we have to emphasize the fact that the word coordination is used rather than harmonization of social security systems of the European countries, because this term basically implies that each country has its own unique social security system. But when it comes to the transfer of social security rights of immigrant people, this regulation coordinates the procedures and processes governing such transfer. This word, you can see this word coordination used in all the European documents and legislation rather than harmonization. As I mentioned, the ILO is the framework body for putting standards and norms for the transfer of immigrants' social security rights, and it defines the basic social security rights in its Convention 102, the Social Security Minimum Standards Convention. Here, 9 risks are counted: sickness, unemployment, employment injury, occupational diseases, family benefit, maternity benefit, old age, invalidity benefit, and survivor's benefit. Countries which ratify this convention are required to provide these benefits within their social security coverage. However, some countries may put some reservations to one or more of these risks according to their national context. For example, Turkey has put a reservation on the family benefits because it's not regulated in our national laws. And as I said, the main instrument is the Social Security Agreement, the most effective instrument for protecting the social security rights of immigrants. The social security agreements are characterized as having 4 main basic pillars. These constitute the backbone of any social security agreement signed between 2 countries. Equal treatment, namely no discrimination on the grounds of nationality. The other is the applicable legislation, namely setting forth which country's legislation the person is subject to under various conditions. I'll come to this later. And the third is the aggregation or totalization of periods of insurance, residence or employment in each country. And the last is the export of benefits acquired in one country to the other country. And this is really one of the most important pillars of the social security agreements. And these agreements serve to avoid double coverage and double contribution payments, as we'll see in the coming slides. And first, the equal treatment. What we mean with equal treatment or equality of treatment, under this principle, discrimination on the grounds of nationality is prohibited. This means that immigrant workers working and residing on the territory of a state is protected, is subject to the same obligations and benefits as the citizens of the other state. So if there is a social security agreement between 2 countries, each country shall provide the same social security benefits to immigrant workers of the other country. or even to those who are tourists in the receiving country, as it provides for its own citizens. So this the main objective is to avoid any discrimination between the nationals of that country and those who come to that country for working either temporarily or permanently. Another important aspect of protection of rights is in the case of change of residence. This mainly relates to the long-term social security risks, as we call it, namely the old age pensions, disability, and survivors' benefits. And also, if this is included in the agreement, in the bilateral agreement, the rights of family members are also protected, as in the case of survivors' benefits, which are paid to the survivors after the death of an insured person. And aggregation of periods, this is perhaps one of the most critical elements of a social security agreement, in particular when we are speaking about immigrants who prefer to return back to their countries after a period of foreign work, or who leave their countries to work abroad after working for some period in their homelands. To speak for Turkish workers in Europe, because we have most of our immigrant workers in Europe, mostly in Germany. This is one of the most functional elements of a social security agreement signed between Turkey and other European countries. To establish a right to a benefit in a state, periods completed in the other state are also taken into account. Here we can see an example. If a person has worked for 15 years in Turkey, according to Turkish laws, he will not be entitled to any pension because there's a limit of 20 years, and in the recent reforms, there's a period of 20 years and payment for some amount. But if the person has another period, like 5 years of work in a country with which Turkey has an agreement, then we add up the periods. It makes 20 years, and the person becomes eligible for pension in Turkey. But the payment is made on pro rata basis. I mean, the other countries, let's say Germany, pays for the 5 years, and Turkey pays for the 15 years, but the person becomes eligible. The applicable legislation to the workers is set out at the beginning articles of the agreements. In these articles, rules are laid down to determine which country's legislation the person is subject. In general, the lex loci laboris principle is applicable, which means that the legislation of place of work is applicable for that person. If that person is working in Turkey, if a Turkish worker is working in Germany, he will be subject to German law. And if a German worker is working in Turkey, he will be subject to Turkish law. There are some exceptions to this, like posted workers, temporary posted workers, and diplomatic missions, and also seafarers. And I'll skip this. We have the sickness and maternity benefits. These also could be transferred if there's an agreement. In case of one disease, the insured person or his family members are entitled to health benefits during their residence in the other country. Some countries may be reluctant to give health benefits and exclude this from the agreements. And also we can also transfer the family benefits if this is stipulated in the agreement. We also are able to give death grants in case of death of the insured person. If the person dies in either of the countries, he or his family could claim for the benefit in any of the countries. And you can see the pensions. We have free pensions. Globally, these are the long-term insurances, as we call it, the old age, disability, and survivors' pensions. An insured person entitled to a pension as a result of his work in a country continues to receive pension, even if he transfers his place of residence to the other country. Of course, the country that has a social security agreement with the host country. The important thing is that the pensions are also transferable to third countries. This is basically regulated in the agreement. And also it's possible to transfer the benefits for work accidents and occupational diseases. We have the posted workers. This is really important for countries who are sending, for companies who are sending their workers to the other country for a specific period. During this period, that person will be subject to the legislation of the sending country. So the company which sends that person will bear all of the costs, all the social security contributions, and so we will avoid double coverage. This posting is usually regulated from 12 months to up to 60 months. This is the European practice. This is also applicable for the self-employed persons. As I said, this exemption is particularly advantageous for companies posting their workers to abroad, since they avoid double contribution payments. And in addition to bilateral agreements, we have the multilateral convention, the European Convention on Social Security. Of course, it's not applicable in the US, but in Europe-wide, there are 8 countries who signed this, ratified these agreements, and this is narrow scope compared to the bilateral agreements. This regulates only long-term insurances and applicable legislation, and this provides for aggregation of risks. So these 8 countries, Turkey is included among these. They don't need to have a bilateral agreement between them in order to provide for aggregation of periods. But if Turkey has an agreement with the other country, that bilateral agreement prevails over this European Convention on Social Security. Let's get this. So in Turkey, we have 4.2 million people living abroad, and 1.7 million of them are working, and more than 2 million or others have converted to other countries' citizenships. And in the Constitution of Turkish Republic, the government has the state has the obligation to protect the needs, to protect the benefits and rights of Turkish nationals working abroad, and safeguard their ties with the home country. So Turkey has signed many social security agreements pursuant to this constitutional provision. And these agreements are under the international law, and they're ratified through a law enacted by the parliament. And according to Article 90 of the Constitution, these bilateral agreements have superiority over Turkish laws. So they are binding on persons and institutions, same as local laws. We signed agreements with 29 countries over all the world, and 25 of these are in force and 4 in the process of ratification, as you may see, mainly the European Union countries and Canada, and one from Africa. These are the countries that we have signed a social security agreement. Unfortunately, we do not have a social security agreement with the United States, which is the most important part of my presentation. So it's hard for the time being for us to protect the rights of our Turkish people in the United States, and vice versa. I'll just mention, as last sentence, there is a specific law for Turkish people who are working abroad. Maybe this may be relevant to Turkish people working in the United States. We give pension to those persons who have worked in the other country, as long as they pay for the periods they worked in the other country. So they have to, if they, let's say, they worked in the United States for 20 years, when return back to Turkey, they have to pay for each day of those 20 years, like a lump sum amount is paid, and then the person has the right for pension throughout for the whole of his life. And this is really a unique law that only Turkey has in the world. This was really enacted for the purpose of protecting the ties of Turkish nationals living abroad with Turkey. There are some conditions, as you may see. And lastly, some challenges about the social security agreements. Low number of people know about their rights. So the social security agreements should be promoted, and public awareness campaigns should be launched in countries to let people know that they have these rights. They have the rights of transfer under these agreements, like the one that ILO launched in Moldova. In order to claim a benefit, the person should be a registered worker. Some countries tend to save from social security costs by trying to cut off transfers from family members being abroad. This is a real problem, particularly in European countries. And the last thing is that all agreements should be dynamic, revised, and updated regularly. Thank you for your attention.
We do have a couple minutes for any questions. Is there any questions for Ahmet?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmet, for your very good presentation. You learned a lot about the social security tools for Turkish people outside. But what I am wondering is, as many people here could imagine and could, could forecast, is there any particular reason of the lack of any kind of social security agreement between both of these countries?
Between the U.S. and Turkey, you mean?
Or are there any studies or workings before?
Yes, actually, from speaking from the Turkish side, before coming here, I checked the documents, and we have proposed the United States to sign an agreement in 2012, and many times before that. But actually, the response was not positive from the U.S. side. They said that it was not possible for the time being due to some commitments and some scarcity of resources, as it was expressed by the United States. And we will be pleased if this platform could serve a mission to push the U.S. authorities for a possible social security agreement between the two countries, because we don't think that this will bring much burden for the United States. But it will be very beneficial for our people, Turkish people living here and working here, because there is a high number, and their work in the United States is lost if they return back to Turkey, because there is no such agreement. So we are from Turkish side, we are really eager to have such an agreement. But as I said, the United States side is not that much positive.
Sibel?
Thank you so much for your presentation. To be able to sign the Social Security Agreement with the U.S., when these type of bilateral agreements are negotiated, is it mostly at the state level? Can we say that it's more political?
Yeah, it's political. Yeah, it's political. The political will should decide to sign an agreement, then it becomes a technical issue. But to give a start, the politicians or the government should consider this to sign an agreement. But as the process starts, the Social Security Institution of the United States, I don't know its official name, and our ministry come together to start the negotiation process. Well, actually, the coverage isn't necessarily shouldn't. Maybe the coverage could be restricted to a couple of risks rather than covering the whole. Maybe the U.S. government want just to add the aggregation of periods, which is very important, and may say that, okay, I say yes to this, but I don't say yes to health, for example. But although very limited in scope, an agreement should be signed, and this will not only be beneficial for the Turkish people living in Turkey, but also for United States people working the American people working in Turkey, because let's say when a tourist comes to Turkey and he needs or she needs a health visits a health facility, he's not able to receive a health service from public hospitals. He has to pay from his own pocket, and this is also important from the United States side for the post workers. There are many U.S. companies in Turkey operating, and if there's an agreement signed between two countries, the company will not be obliged to pay contributions in Turkey, because it will be sufficient only to have an insurance in the United States. So this will prevent also the double coverage.
Are there any specific reasons that the U.S. government is not too eager to sign such an agreement?
What?
The most sensitive hot topics that they didn't want to?
Well, actually, what I was told from my senior officials was that the lack of scarcity of resources and other commitments of the United States. I don't know what actually fits under that title.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Of course, for our appreciation plaques, we would like Ms. Petek Günay, who was very, very helpful to us during the organization, a very valuable member of our team, to present the awards. Thank you.
Lenny, I think they'd like to get it in front of the sign up here, Lenny.
Çok teşekkürler. Okay, here's the plaque. We'll hold here. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now for something entirely different. What we're going to do is we're going to change rooms. Before that, we're going to take a short break. But as we say in Turkish, tedbili mekanda ferahlık varmış. So we'll be splitting into two separate groups. There are going to be two concurrent sessions. One is actually titled pre-law session, but it's not precisely going to be for pre-law students. It will be also for current students, and there'll be a discussion about non-traditional legal professions and what you can do with your law degree other than being an attorney. So it will be very interesting. If I can see a show of hands of the students who are interested, because I need to give a number and they'll be giving a tour. Okay, so you guys will be, after the coffee break, going to room W300, which is directly upstairs. Right above us. Right above us. And then we'll have a think tank session where we will discuss the feasibility of a bar association, the Turkish-American Bar Association, and that's going to be at room W320. It's directly above us. So we'll take about a 10-15 minute coffee break, and then we'll meet upstairs. Thank you very much. And then after that, we'll come downstairs here for a networking reception. Okay? Thank you.